What do I look for when I'm interacting with somebody who's interested in awakening, interested in waking up, or going through the process themselves already? First of all, I want to say that the reason I'm making this video is really just to kind of clarify some of the basics about this process. It also will highlight some of the pitfalls and I guess kind of hone in on what awakening really is, even though I've talked about this in many different ways. It bears repeating because in some sense, this is elusive when it comes to conceptualizing or mapping it. And yet it's a very profound transformation. It's the most profound transformation you can go through in this lifetime. So I really like to be clear and offer any sort of guidance I can for someone who is oriented this way. First of all, I guess what I want to talk about is that there are many different motifs to the awakening process as far as symptoms or side effects or experiences. And I'll just put these in the category of experience to differentiate experience from realization, experience from the true identity shift. There are many experiences that occur up to and even during the shift in identity, but the experiences themselves are not what define awakening. They are side effects, essentially. And this can range from physical side effects, strange sensations, tingling, sometimes even involuntary body movements, physical pain, changes in the senses. I've seen all of these with people who are approaching awakening. There could also be what I might just call energetic changes or Kundalini type changes, where you may notice a very, very distinct pattern of energetic movement through the body or a buildup in one part of the body. This is often associated with the first category or physical symptoms, sensations, movements, and so forth, but it's often very obvious to the person that there's some kind of energy that's very powerful moving through the body. It can move upward, it can move downward, it can move in all kinds of directions, and again, it can be stuck somewhere in the body. These are also sort of side effects or energetic components of awakening, but they aren't the awakening themselves. There can also be moments or periods of what I would call just mystical experiences. Mystical experiences I would define in this way. Something that feels, in one sense or one way or another, more real than what we normally define as real. It can also feel transcendent, as if you're feeling something beyond or feeling something more fundamental than our usual experiences. And they fall in a couple of different categories, but one is a kind of timelessness. The experience of timelessness can also feel like a kind of vastness, an expansiveness, an awareness that is unbound by thoughts or even by the person or the body. And then there's another sort of mystical experience, which is a kind of all-inclusiveness. Some people will describe it as universal love or interconnectedness or the most connected feeling I've ever felt, the most loving feeling I've ever felt. And again, these are experiential in that they often last a short period of time. They can last minutes, hours, sometimes even a day or more, but typically shorter than that. But the effect, the afterglow can be there a while, and also the memory of it, the instinct that, oh my gosh, that represents something that's beyond my normal way of experiencing, beyond the normal ways that humans talk about being and experiencing. And so it leaves a lasting impression in the sense that it gives you some kind of guidepost or something that says, hey, there's more to life, there's more to experience, there's more to me, there's more to identity, there's more to reality than we normally acknowledge or experience. So those mystical experiences are often powerful catalysts for further refinement of what they actually represent, right? Which is that the normal containment that we call identity, the boundaries that we call self and other in the world, and the mental mapping of past, present, and future, that those are not real in the way we thought they were. And when they start to fall, we experience things far beyond that. There can also be experiences or side effects of this awakening process that are very uncomfortable. very, very uncomfortable, can be very intense emotions that we're not used to. Terror, existential terror, existential fear. We can also experience a kind of nihilism or even a solipsism. These are partially philosophical. There's a conclusion attached to both of these. Nihilism is something like nothing matters. What's the point? There's just nothing really matters at all. So who cares? Why do anything? And so forth. Solipsism is this feeling that I'm the only thing in the entire universe. I'm the only one in the universe. There are nuances to these, but these are just examples. And often people will experience these with some degree of concern that like, oh my gosh, what if that is what awakening is about? What if that is the truth of reality? And both of them come with a certain kind of dysphoria usually. So those, you can have experiences of those. And you can even be prone to certain experiences, meaning that they tend to recur for you. All of these are fine. I mean, these are just the side effects or the precursors to awakening. There's another one that I won't go into great detail, but I will talk about it because this one can be one of the more distressing, and that is dissociation. And that is something that everybody actually experiences periodically. In fact, I've said before, and I've found this to be true more and more, that the world of mind and thought identification, the illusory world of mind identification that we actually wake up from with a shift in identity, is based on a dissociative experience. It is in and of itself dissociative. It's just a stable, socially endorsed dissociation. So we already are dissociating, but some people can do it to the extreme. And it can be a kind of fear response, feeding a dissociation response, feeding another fear response, feeding a dissociation response. And there's something that happens within thought where we actually push thoughts away because we have so much fear of thought. Because we still believe in thought. We still believe thought is defining my reality and so forth, that we can create this almost like a shutdown state. It could be called dorsal vagal shutdown. And that's almost universally uncomfortable. It's not a peaceful clarity. It's not a peaceful emptiness or shunyata experience. It's not an experience of pure consciousness or pure awareness. It's a dissociated, uncomfortable feeling like I can't feel anything, like I'm not here. It can be in the form of derealization or depersonalization. Now, most people don't get this, but some people do. And I should also say that is not caused by awakening. It is triggered by stressful experiences, unexpected experiences, triggered essentially by emotion, by fear. And people who tend to dissociate can dissociate for all kinds of reasons. Dissociation can start with changing medications, starting a new medication, stopping a medication. I've heard of people having massive dissociation from being hypnotized, from trying psychedelic substances, from smoking pot. Like I've seen and heard stories by people describing almost anything you can imagine triggering dissociation, traumatic events in life causing dissociation. So dissociations, in a sense, it's a special case, but it does overlap with some of the side effects of approaching awakening and so forth. Usually after awakening, people don't tend to dissociate problematically in this way, although I think it probably can occur in deeper realization. This should clarify itself, but just understand that anybody has some propensity for this. It's possible. Put under the right circumstances, right triggers, right stressors, the dissociated state can appear in most people. So all of these are sort of the side effects, the precursors, the signs of awakening. And then what I talk about a lot is that the kind of raw material for awakening, which is summarized by a lot of the stuff I've already mentioned, but there's a component that I have to mention, and that is what I just call suffering, which I didn't make that up. This goes back to Buddhism and the Four Noble Truths and all that. Dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. It's not physical pain. It's also not life not going the way you expected. Like those can lead to suffering, but that's not what it means. Suffering means the fundamental, or almost fundamental, like the pervasive sense of something about life is just not right. I'm missing something big. Something doesn't feel set up to allow me to actually feel peace. It's almost like at every turn I find more ways to feel uncomfortable and dissatisfied and so forth. That's the sense of suffering, almost like the analogy I've heard of pushing a shopping cart backwards. Like you try to push it from the wrong side and it's just like it steers wrong, and every effort you put seems to push it in the wrong direction, and those kinds of things. So that's unsatisfactoriness. And that is it's not really a side effect of awakening. It's actually part and parcel with what drives the awakening process itself. And also a kind of very, very fundamental curiosity about the nature of self, nature of reality, nature of truth. And these actually end up going hand in hand at some point, but they can feel very different at first. So those are the kind of drivers of awakening. Now, I started this video by saying I'm going to talk about what I look for, right? And all of that preamble to this is really just to say, hey, you can have almost any set of experiences and be oriented to awakening, and that's fine. But here's what I really try to assess, and there's a reason I assess this, and there's a reason I look for this, and that is because I'm careful not to push people too hard who really aren't that interested in awakening, at least right now, because it can be really confusing, disorienting, and can even cause dissociation and so forth. So that's not super common. I have a kind of biased sample when I talk to people online and so forth, because they've read my book, because they watch my videos. They know how direct I am. They know that if you're talking to me, I'm talking about awakening. They've read my first chapter of my book where there's tons of like cautions cautions, I would say. It's like informed consent about what you're actually engaging in. So I have a kind of biased sample, but if I were to just talk to random people about this in a very direct way, it really can upset people. It really triggers people. It's not everybody's ready for that. So I really try to see like, well, what do you want, right? What are you actually interested in here? And if someone says awakening, that's great, but what do you mean by that? Because there are a lot of ways to use the word awakening. I use it in a specific way, but people may mean something else. And sometimes they do. Usually once I'm talking to them, they know my stuff and they realize what I'm talking about, and that's what they are aligned with. So it's not that hard to discern this, but I sometimes, if I'm a little bit unsure, if somebody seems like they're on the fence somehow, or they're struggling with themselves a lot, or like something just feels a little off, I just go back to basics and go, what are you trying to do? Right? What are you looking for? What do you want to do with your energy, with your time, with your effort, with your inquiry? What do you really want to do with this life, right? Which apparently, even though it's a question people seem to talk about, like what to do with your life, it's the way I mean it. It's not a super common question, actually. It's like, because what I'm really asking is not what do you want to do in relationship, and what do you want to do in vocation and so forth, and what do you want to do with your health? Because almost everyone should answer that the same way, right? You want to have good relationships. You want to have a successful vocation that you enjoy. You want to have good health. Like, who doesn't, right? But what I really mean is like, what do you think that's going to give you? What are you really looking for underneath that, right? Why do you want those things? And I think if people start to look, they'll say, well, what I really want is peace. I really want equanimity. I really want to feel authentic and aligned with myself. I don't want to feel like I'm second guessing myself. I don't want to feel like I'm lost in life. I don't want to feel like I'm living someone else's set of beliefs or intentions about how I should live my life. I don't want to do that. I want to be real, congruent. I don't want to feel self-conscious. I don't want to have to think about how I'm coming across all the time because I'm trying to curate my appearance and the way I come across to other people. Like, I don't want to do that, right? But I do that, and there's a lot of that going on. Again, that's what I would call the unsatisfactoriness. And so when I sense that in people, that like, yeah, they really want to address the underlying issues, right? The underlying dissatisfaction. They want to correct the habits that cause them to feel not like themselves, small. Yeah. And so what that really comes down to, if I talk to somebody who's been at this for a bit and who's really started to dig in and do some inquiry, is what they'll say in some form or another is they realize that they have to go beyond their illusory sense of self. They may interpret that different ways. They may be looking for the self with a capital S or the I am sense or something, or pure being or interconnectedness or something, they also may be looking for no self, right? If they've got like a sort of Buddhist background. But those are just thoughts. Those are just beliefs. It's not really about that. It's about the fundamental or deep instinct that the way I'm perceiving myself right now is not quite right. That I am my own barrier, really, fundamentally. That my ideas about myself, I am willing to challenge them because I can see that they're my own prison. If somebody's there, if somebody's got that, they're good to go. They may have competing agendas. Like, sure, they still may want to have relationships or, continue their sort of habits of improving their health or whatever it is. Those things can be there, but to be able to have them actually verbalize that and acknowledge that, and it feels authentic and congruent to me when I interact with somebody, that's essentially what I'm looking for. Yeah. Now, I do see people who are in process of awakening already, or a lot of these sort of side effects of awakening are already happening. They could be energetic. They could be physical. It could be that they're actually in a certain tradition where they're already doing some kind of inquiry, meditation, mindfulness. They like that stuff. There's something about mindfulness that seems to work for them. There's something about meditation that's working for them. So a lot of those signs are there, but they may not quite be clear yet. And I don't want to give them those words like I need to go beyond myself. I wouldn't tell them to say that, and I wouldn't ask them if that's the case. I kind of look for it, right? I guess now I'm making a video about it so you know this, but they may not actually be there yet. They may not quite have recognized that they're their own final obstruction, but there's enough evidence that they're sensing that. There's enough evidence that they've exhausted other avenues as the big breakthrough that's needed, right? Oh, I've had breakthroughs in the relationships. I've had breakthroughs at work. I've had breakthroughs with health. None of those have really done it. There's something else here. I know there's something else here. That's a really good sign. And they're ultimately going to look in the right place. They probably already are looking in the right place, and or the awakening is already unfolding. Yeah. Now, this isn't common, especially like when I interact with people from my channel or who have found me through my book. In fact, almost never, but occasionally in other settings, I could bump into someone who talks about awakening, but they're not interested in transformation of identity. That's not what they're interested in. In fact, they don't want it. Maybe they're interested in meditation, or even maybe have been to a retreat of some kind, or they're interested in mindfulness, but they're interested in it so that they can have a better life, merely so they can have a better life, so they can level up at work or something like that. It's fine with me, but that's not what I'm talking about. And if that's really all they're interested in, and that's actually scary to even think about investigating the nature of identity, that's not my audience. And I should just be clear about that. That's just not my audience. It doesn't mean that person can't wake up, but they're not oriented to it right now. And maybe that's what they need. They need to work on whatever area of their life they're inclined to work on right now, and that's fine. But yeah, occasionally I do see that where someone will actually say they want to wake up, but when I talk to them, I'm like, I'm not so sure that's what you really want. Not what I'm talking about, awakening. So that does happen on occasion. Again, it's not a common one, but it's something I look for, because I don't want to do anyone a disservice. I don't want to give something they don't want, or push something that they're not push in an area that they're not willing to be pushed in yet, because it can be really uncomfortable, and I've bumped into that before. So that's kind of what I look for is that. And so if you're anywhere along this process, it's like, just feel into that. What do I really want, and why do I want it? If I think a relationship's going to make me happy, why? Right? Why do you think that would make you happy? What would that look like to be happy in a relationship? I'd feel loved. I'd feel love. I'd feel peace. I'd feel equanimity, right? I don't know if that's your answer, but that would be my answer, because I can see now that those are surrogates. The things that we seek with our mind are surrogates for the realization that's already available all the time. And when that is clear, when that shift happens, that's exactly what you realize. When the shift in identity happens, what you realize is, holy shit, everything I always wanted that I thought was in the future, or in a relationship, or at work, or in this thing or that thing, or some set of conditions I've been imagining, That's not where it is. It's not where it is. It's right here. It's like just here, always, right? That is the serendipity, the grace, the magic of awakening. But you can't imagine your way into that. It's like you've got to really break that spell of the seeking separate identity that is fooling itself. And it has a lot of defense mechanisms, right? So that takes some leverage. It takes some work. It takes some help from life and so forth. So before you start even messing with that, let's just make sure that you really want what you think you want. And that's what I mean by what I look for in somebody who's interested in awakening. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know if there are any further questions or if I wasn't clear on something, but I think it's important sometimes just to talk about the basics.